Michael, I've been thinking about something that keeps coming up in conversations, in emails, in therapy stories. This quiet, invisible sentence that seems to run through so many men's lives. No one sees me. Not in the sense of wanting praise or attention. Just seen, recognized as a human being, not just a provider, a fixer, a guy holding everything together. And the thing that really hits me is how normal it feels for men to feel this way. They don't question it. They don't even admit it to themselves sometimes, or if they do, they bury it fast.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. And it's striking because men aren't saying, "Look at me, I need applause." They're saying, "I exist, and I don't feel anyone notices it." That feeling, it's exhausting. It creeps in slowly, piece by piece, until one day, a man realizes he's been disappearing quietly from his own life.
Exactly. And it's almost polite, isn't it? This invisibility. You push through life, do your job, check boxes, handle problems, and no one notices. And often, you don't even notice yourself. You've been trained to survive quietly.
Right. And that's the danger. Men can look fine externally, working long hours, supporting family, keeping up appearances, but inside, they're quietly eroding. Not because anyone is actively erasing them, but because they've been living in a role they think is expected of them.
And what's heartbreaking is that so many men actually accept this as normal. Being invisible becomes part of their identity. Silent, dutiful, strong. And then they're shocked when relationships feel distant, when they feel disconnected from their own lives.
Exactly. There's another layer too. Men are constantly comparing themselves to some invisible standard, this strong man, who never complains, never falters, always provides. And if they falter, even slightly, it feels like failure. But it's not. Every human feels unseen sometimes. Men just haven't been taught how to express it.
Yeah, and what's striking is how this invisibility isn't just external. Men internalize it. They believe they must always be functional, strong, present for others, but never allow anyone to be present for them. It's like living behind a mask of competence, while the person underneath slowly erodes.
Over time, that erosion shows up in subtle ways: irritability, emotional numbness, withdrawal, or resentment. Sometimes they don't even realize it's happening. It becomes normal, and they don't connect the dots back to that feeling of being unseen.
It's heartbreaking, because the thing they want is simple: to be acknowledged, to be understood, to exist in someone's eyes. And instead, they feel like furniture. Useful, necessary, but unnoticed.
I've heard men say things like, "I can do everything right, but when I walk into a room, no one notices I'm there." Not out of malice from others, but because people stop looking. And then the man stops looking too, at himself, at his needs, at his feelings.
And that's why conversations like this matter. Recognizing the problem is the first step. Seeing it for what it is. Invisibility isn't a flaw. It's a survival mechanism that served a purpose in childhood or stressful environments, but now quietly undermines men's emotional lives.
Exactly. And recognizing it is the first step toward reclaiming presence. Once a man realizes he doesn't have to disappear to survive, he can begin reconnecting with his partner, with friends, with himself.
And that's what we want to explore today. Not just the feeling of being invisible, but why it happens, how it affects men over time, and the subtle, real-world ways they can start being seen without feeling weak or exposed.
Yeah, the good news is that this is changeable. Even small, intentional actions can start to reverse decades of invisibility.
Exactly. Opening a window where there wasn't one before. Noticing, being noticed, learning that it's okay to exist fully, not just as a function, not just as someone carrying the load, but as a human being who matters.
And awareness alone is powerful. Once a man knows he deserves to be seen, it starts to shift how he interacts with the world.
right? And before we dive deeper into what causes this invisibility, Michael, I just want to say to anyone listening, feeling unseen doesn't make you weak. It makes you human.
Exactly. And that's the perspective we want people to keep in mind: compassion, curiosity, not judgment. That's where real change begins.
So, Michael, now that we've talked about how men feel invisible, I want to get into why it happens. It's like there's this pattern, right? Not random, but something deeper that keeps repeating.
Absolutely. There are several layers. First, cultural conditioning. From a young age, boys are told, be strong, don't cry, handle it yourself. It sounds like resilience training, but underneath, it teaches men that their feelings don't matter, or worse, they're a burden.
Yeah, I see that all the time. Boys get praised for doing things right, for being tough, but rarely for expressing what's inside. And so, they grow up learning to silence themselves. And then, when someone finally asks, how do you feel? It's almost disorienting.
And that conditioning doesn't stop in childhood. It carries into adulthood. Men learn that vulnerability is dangerous, weakness is punished, and emotional honesty is risky. Over time, they start hiding not just feelings, but needs and desires.
And I think there's also the role of social invisibility. Adult life reinforces this pattern. Recognition is often for what men do, not who they are. Provider, problem solver, fixer, those roles are visible. But the emotional self? That often goes unnoticed.
Yes. And what's subtle is that men start to stop expecting emotional acknowledgement because it rarely comes. And once expectation drops, the effort to express drops too. It's a quiet withdrawal, but it has big consequences over time.
So it's like a feedback loop. Society says, don't express feelings. Men comply. Others stop noticing emotional cues. Men feel invisible, and then they withdraw further.
Exactly. And there's a third layer: unmet emotional needs in relationships. Even the most loving partner may not pick up on subtle cues, because men haven't been taught to ask. Vulnerability feels risky. Needs go unspoken, unrecognized, slowly eroding connection.
I see that so often in couples. One partner wonders why the other seems distant, while the man inside thinks, if I speak, I'll just be a burden. And so, silence builds.
And then comes internalized judgment. Even when men do want to be seen, they think, I shouldn't need this. I shouldn't feel this way. So they hide, and they punish themselves emotionally.
That's huge. It's not a failure, right? It's survival. But over time, it eats away at emotional life. Men are constantly running on empty inside, trying to hold the outside world together.
Exactly. And here's something I notice clinically: men often describe this as wearing armor. But the armor is heavy. It protects them from judgment and vulnerability, but it also blocks intimacy, joy, and even self connection.
I love that metaphor, armor. It makes sense. And breaking that armor? That's terrifying. It's like stepping out into the world fully exposed after decades of hiding.
Yes. And small cracks in that armor can cause panic, anxiety, shame, guilt. Men are used to holding the line, and letting a crack show feels like losing control.
And yet, acknowledging even a small crack is the first step toward being seen. Even telling a partner, a friend, or a therapist, I feel invisible, is revolutionary in a man's emotional life.
And that's why it's important to understand these causes. Cultural conditioning, social invisibility, unmet needs, internalized judgment, all converge to create a pattern. Once men recognize it, they can start dismantling it.
It's like pulling back a curtain. Suddenly, you can see the mechanisms clearly. And when you see them, you can respond slowly, intentionally, without shame.
And that response can take many forms. Speaking up, small daily acts of honesty, even allowing yourself to rest emotionally without guilt. All of these slowly weaken the armor, allowing real presence to grow.
Yeah. And listeners, I want to be clear, this isn't just theory. These patterns show up in homes, offices, friendships. Men aren't broken. They've just been operating under rules that were never meant for long-term emotional health.
Exactly. And recognizing it gives men a choice. They can continue on autopilot, or they can start experimenting with being seen, being heard, and connecting in ways that feel safe.
And that's what we're going to explore next. The consequences of these patterns when left unchecked. How invisibility turns into emotional burnout in relationships.
Yeah, because understanding the causes helps, but seeing the impact brings urgency. You can't just know you're wearing armor, you have to notice how heavy it's become.
Exactly. And for listeners, I want you to start paying attention. Notice where you might be withdrawing, where silence is keeping you safe but also distant. That awareness is the seed for change.
And small steps, repeated over time, are what matter. No giant leaps required. Awareness, honesty, presence, those are the tools.
Right? And once that awareness starts, you can begin practicing being seen, not in a grand, overwhelming way, but in tiny, consistent, intentional acts.
Exactly. And that's where real emotional transformation begins, slowly, steadily, and safely.
So, Michael, now that we've unpacked the causes of emotional invisibility, let's talk about what happens when it lingers, when men keep hiding, suppressing, and staying silent. I'm talking about emotional burnout in relationships.
Yes, exactly. Burnout isn't just about being tired at work. It's cumulative emotional exhaustion that slowly erodes connection. And in relationships, it shows up in ways that are often subtle at first.
Right? I see couples who live together, share meals, maybe even laugh together, but emotionally, they're miles apart. One partner feels disconnected, and the other feels like no matter what they do, it's never enough.
And that's the tricky part. Men often internalize this. They think, if I'm distant or irritable, it's my fault. I should be able to handle this. Meanwhile, women may interpret the distance as lack of care. Both are trying, but the burnout distorts perception.
It's like running a marathon while carrying invisible weights. You're doing everything you're supposed to do, but inside, you're crumbling. And nobody sees the strain, sometimes not even yourself.
Exactly. I've had clients say things like, I didn't even realize I was exhausted until I snapped over something small. That's the hallmark of burnout. Emotional depletion becomes normalized until a trigger exposes the tension.
And these triggers are often tiny. A missed text, a small argument, a casual request. Suddenly, the emotional tank is empty and everything feels magnified.
Right. And what's fascinating is that men don't always recognize the signs. Subtle irritability, emotional numbness, withdrawal, these are adaptations. They protect men from feeling overwhelmed, but they also disconnect them from their partner and themselves.
I think another part of this is societal pressure. Men are trained to stay strong, solve problems, and maintain composure. Expressing fatigue or frustration feels risky. So, burnout happens quietly without anyone noticing.
And once burnout sets in, it changes communication patterns. Couples stop checking in, they avoid difficult conversations, they live in parallel rather than shared emotional spaces. Small resentments accumulate, but both partners are often unaware of the real source.
I've seen men sitting in silence on the couch, scrolling their phones, feeling empty, while their partner sits right there, longing for a real connection. Both want intimacy, but neither knows how to bridge the gap.
Exactly. And that's where awareness is critical. Recognizing early signs, fatigue, irritability, withdrawal, loss of patience, allows couples to intervene before burnout becomes entrenched.
I also think it's important to highlight that burnout isn't a moral failing. It's not a lack of love. It's an accumulation of stress, unmet needs, and societal conditioning. Men aren't bad partners for feeling exhausted. They're human.
Absolutely. And for women listening, it's crucial to understand this too. Emotional distance often isn't about disinterest, it's a protective mechanism. Understanding this creates space for empathy rather than judgment.
So, what are the ways couples can address burnout together? Even small steps, I mean.
First, acknowledge it. Just saying, I feel exhausted, I need a moment, can prevent resentment. Second, practice micro connections, brief check ins, shared jokes, small gestures that rebuild emotional intimacy. Third, normalize vulnerability. Make it safe to express emotion without fear of criticism.
And it doesn't need to be perfect. Even acknowledging mistakes, snapping in frustration, missing a check in, and talking about it openly goes a long way.
Exactly. Burnout isn't something you fix in one conversation. It's a process. Small, consistent efforts to connect, check in, and express needs gradually rebuild the emotional energy.
And listeners, this is key. Burnout doesn't mean your relationship is failing. It's a signal that something needs attention. And attention, even in small doses, can reverse years of accumulated stress.
Right. And another point, self care matters. Men often prioritize everyone else but themselves. Without rest, hobbies, and moments of solitude, burnout accelerates. Connection is easier when each partner is emotionally replenished.
That's such a critical point. People underestimate how much emotional recovery supports relationships. It's not selfish, it's essential.
And finally, creating safe routines of check ins, 5 minutes at the end of the day to share feelings, hopes, or frustrations, can prevent burnout from accumulating. Small, intentional acts make a huge difference.
I like that. Tiny, consistent habits over time. Not grand gestures, not perfect solutions. Just showing up, noticing, and being present.
That's the real power. Relationships survive and thrive not through perfection, but through daily acts of connection, honesty, and presence.
Michael, you know what really hits me these days? How everything feels heavier. Social media, work stress, family obligations. It's like life itself has become this constant pressure cooker.
Absolutely. And couples are caught in it too. People compare their relationships to some perfect highlight reel online, wondering, why isn't our love that exciting? While juggling emails, meetings, and responsibilities. The emotional load just keeps building quietly.
And the paradox is that people want closeness, but life keeps pulling them apart. The tiniest annoyances start to feel enormous. A minor disagreement becomes a full-blown argument, or worse, silence.
Right. But the good news is, small, intentional changes can make a massive difference. Even something as simple as being fully present with each other, putting phones down, sitting together without distraction, can say, I see you. I'm here.
It's incredible how something so small can be so powerful. A hug, a smile, a shared joke, tiny things that over time actually rebuild connection.
And let's talk about communication. One of the biggest helpers is expressing needs early. Men, women, anyone, saying something like, I need a moment to recharge. Or, I feel a bit unseen, can we talk? Stops small cracks from turning into deep fractures.
I love that. Even a single sentence can prevent tension from snowballing. And asking for what you need, it shouldn't feel like weakness, but for a lot of men, it does.
Another thing is celebrating micro moments of connection. Morning coffee together, a quick text during the day, holding hands while cooking. These small gestures are like deposits in the emotional bank account.
People chase grand gestures, vacations, gifts, elaborate plans. But it's the tiny, consistent actions that actually keep relationships alive.
And building safe routines for check ins is huge. It doesn't have to be formal, just asking, "How are you feeling?" Or, "I've been distant, can we reconnect?" Those moments prevent resentment from building silently.
Yeah. And even if you slip up, forget to check in, get short tempered, acknowledging it openly is enough to keep things from unraveling.
Absolutely. Emotional burnout isn't something that vanishes overnight. It's about steady, intentional care. Awareness, honesty, consistent connection. That's what rebuilds emotional energy.
Like that, steady and intentional. It's not dramatic or flashy, just presence, small honesty, gestures of care. Over time, it completely changes the dynamic.
And the beautiful part is that anyone can start today. No perfect timing, no huge plans, just little choices, repeated consistently, create real emotional change.
So, for listeners, notice where life has become heavy. Take a few minutes for presence, a sentence of honesty, a tiny act of care. That's enough to start turning the tide.
And remember, these aren't one time fixes. They're habits. Small steps repeated every day gradually restore connection, vitality, and intimacy.
Yeah, and it's reassuring to know that even when life is messy, chaotic, overwhelming, these tiny choices make the difference. They're the glue that holds relationships together in a high pressure world.
Right. Presence, honesty, connection. That's the framework. And it's accessible to everyone, regardless of age, stage of life, or circumstance.
And that's what makes this actionable. It's not just theory, it's something people can start doing right now with their partner, friend, or even themselves.
Because when burnout and pressure are inevitable, intentional connection becomes the antidote.
And a key takeaway? It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start. Be present. Speak. Connect. Over time, it changes everything.
Because when burnout and pressure are inevitable, intentional connection becomes the antidote.
So, Michael, we've walked through invisibility, the causes, burnout in relationships, and modern pressures. Before we wrap up, I want to leave listeners with something practical, but also hopeful. Because it's easy to feel overwhelmed hearing all this.
Absolutely. It's heavy, but it's not hopeless. The patterns we've discussed, invisibility, emotional burnout, pressure, they're all real. But the good news is that awareness opens the door to change.
Yeah, and change doesn't have to be dramatic. It's the small things that matter. 5 minutes of genuine presence, a single sentence of honesty, a tiny gesture of care. Over time, these actions build a new emotional reality.
One of the most important things is self compassion. Men often judge themselves harshly for feeling tired, unseen, or disconnected. But these feelings don't make you weak, they make you human. And recognizing that is the first step toward transformation.
I love that. And I think listeners should know it's okay to start small. You don't have to overhaul your life. Just notice where you've been hiding and make one small move toward being seen.
Yes. And for relationships, that might mean saying, "I need you to hear me today," or even just asking for a moment of presence. Small moments of vulnerability create enormous emotional ripples.
It's kind of like planting seeds. You water them consistently, and over time, they grow into strong roots of connection, intimacy, and trust.
Exactly. And listeners, remember, it's never too late to start. No matter your age, stage of life, or past mistakes, even tiny, consistent steps toward presence and honesty can rebuild what's been lost.
And I want to emphasize that this is about being gentle with yourself, too. Change takes time. There will be missteps. You'll feel unsure, but each step matters.
Right. And as you practice presence, honesty, and connection, you'll notice subtle shifts: a small smile, a deeper conversation, less tension. Those moments accumulate and transform your emotional landscape.
So, for anyone listening today, notice where you've been invisible. Take a small step. Speak, connect, be present, and allow yourself to be human in the process.
Change isn't about perfection, it's about consistent, compassionate effort. And even small acts of connection and honesty can ripple through your life and your relationships in ways you may not immediately see.
Yeah, and I hope that if you take nothing else from this episode, it's this: you matter. Your feelings matter. Your presence matters. And the world, or at least the people close to you, can see you if you give yourself permission to be seen.
Absolutely. And remember, even the heaviest armor can be set down, one piece at a time. You can reclaim your visibility, your emotional energy, and your connection with others starting today.
Thank you, Michael, for walking through all of this with me. And thank you to everyone listening for giving yourselves the gift of awareness and presence today.
It's been a pleasure, Daniel. And to everyone listening, take care of yourself, be gentle, and stay curious about your emotional world.
And that's it for this episode. If anything resonated with you, I encourage you to reflect, maybe even journal your thoughts, and think about one small step you can take toward being seen. And if you have thoughts or reflections, leave a comment, share, or just sit with it. Presence starts within, but it spreads outward.